Boop! Hello, this is Ken. I like making things. I love finding affordable ways to DIY a variety of things. Money can't buy everything, except maybe figures. I love collecting figures and recreating iconic scenes. Every figure deserves to shine on my display. So every week I ask myself the same question, and answer it by creating something I'm proud of. Join my weekly adventure by subscribing to my channel. Leave your feedback and suggestions down below. I often get inspired by your comments, and I hope I can inspire you too. Last week, I made mini displays for my Gotenks and Piccolo figures, adding them to my ever-growing Dragon Ball collection display. Check that video out. So, I've been making diorama displays for my Marvel Legends figures. I try to make each diorama unique, recreating iconic scenes from the TV shows and the movies, so each figure can shine in my display. Out of all the dioramas so far, my favorite has gotta be the Wandavision display for my Scarlet Witch figure. There's another iconic scene from that show. But first, let's have a look at White Vision. This figure is pretty cool. It doesn't exactly share the same mold as the original Vision, especially the transparent cape, but there's something that bothers me. I'll point it out in a bit. Here's the original Vision. My first Marvel diorama display was made for Wanda and Vision. I decided to make Vision's base detachable so Wanda could join her endgame buddies. Now let's look at that figure. It's a really good figure. I love the overall metallic paint job. That translucent cape is gorgeous. Together, they'll make a nice display. But before I do that, I have to fix the figures first. Let's deconstruct this figure. The thing that really bothers me are these cream-colored bits of armor on his forearm and legs. The color makes them look like they've been under the sun for too long and have started turning yellow. Because the figure is mostly white, our eyes are naturally drawn to the most colorful areas. So I'm gonna paint over these bits so they blend with the overall figure better. I'm also going to slightly modify the head and the front of his cape to add a bit more dimension to the figure. Speaking of the cape, the color is up on the original figure too. It's silver in the show and not gold like the figure. The boots are also a bit plain. It appears to be a bit darker in the show. Other than that, I really like this figure. That's my analysis. It doesn't mean this figure isn't great. I just wanted to make it even better. So, can I make it? Let's start with White Vision. Those armbands are bothering me so much. I think if they were whiter, they wouldn't be as distracting. So I'm gonna use some white paint to fill in the inner bits of the gauntlets. Gauntlets? Okay, what do you call this piece of armor? Anyway, there are molded lines on these arm guards. I don't know if they're screen accurate or just the same mold as the original Vision, but I'm going to use these lines as a guide so I know where to apply the white paint. Alright, the white is breaking up the forearm protectors nicely. Now they are less distracting. Now onto the boots. There aren't any lines I could use on the boots, so I'm gonna have to improvise. I just want to make it mostly white with a bit of the cream accent. So I'm gonna paint the front of the boots white, and leave a bit of a border at the top. Alright, there we go. I feel like they look a bit more elegant now. However, I still find the cream color a bit distracting. So I mixed myself a slightly lighter cream shade and I'm gonna apply a thin coat over them, so they match the color on this belt. And then I'm gonna apply a coat of glossy varnish to make them look a bit more metallic. Then I'm gonna apply that lighter cream color and add that to that cape thing to create a bit more definition. Next, I'm gonna apply the glossy varnish over the extruding parts of his head. That way, certain parts of his head will look more metallic when the light hits it. And just one final coat of varnish to seal everything in. Alright, here's White Vision all painted. At a glance, It doesn't look like I did much. But now your eyes aren't drawn to his forearm protectors and boots. Instead, the focus stays on his face. I also did a bit of paint on his face to bring out his facial features. I made his eyes a bit more intimidating and blue. He looks more like a cold-blooded killer robot with blue eyes. I also added more details to his bracers. I painted over the lines with a bit of gold, so the colors aren't so flat looking. Now onto regular vision. I'm going to apply thin coats of silver onto his shoulder bits. There are these molded lines molded onto his shoulders. I want to keep the paint thin so it doesn't fill out those lines. While the paint is drying, I'm going to apply the same silver paint onto his head. I don't think it's necessary, but I want it to look a bit more metallic. Alright, just a few more coats on his shoulders. Okay, next, I'm applying a very thin coat of purple to all the red areas. The red is a bit too vibrant and warm toned. Vision has more of a purple skin tone than a red one. I don't want to completely cover up the red because I do like the natural sheen it has. And for the boots, I'm going to give him black soles. I also applied a thin coat of matte varnish over the black paint. I usually don't apply finishing coats unless it's to make things glossy, but I want to test this out and see how it looks in the long run. Alright, here's the good old Vision with a slightly updated look. The face is a bit better with a darker colder red. And you may notice that his body is also less green here. That's because I applied a very thin coat of blue over it, so it's more of a turquoise color than pure green. I just love how metallic everything looks. And when I put the visions side by side, you can tell who's the good guy and who's the bad guy now. Now for the display. The scene I'm going to recreate is the Ship of Theseus scene at the library. At first, I was looking forward to the Vision versus Vision fight, and when that scene happened, I knew that had to be the scene for my diorama display. Now I'm not going to make it to scale because that would be too big, and I've learned my lesson with some of my diorama displays. My Shang-Chi and Stark Tower display don't fit in my shelves. Boo! So this time I'm going to keep it compact. I think this will work out really well. Hiya! Here's it all printed. Time to cut all the pieces out. I kept the model very basic and simple, mostly. This will make the folding and gluing relatively easy to do. With the right texture, it should look convincing. You probably can't tell from my voice, but I'm so excited about this diorama display. I've been sitting on this for months. When I made the Westview display, I did it before the final episode, so I hadn't seen this scene yet. In that display, poor Vision was stuck in the TV. He deserves better. But then I had to wait till I get my white Vision figure. And this project kinda got pushed to the back. Until now. The library is actually pretty fun to fold and glue. I decided to only do half of it because visually it makes more sense this way, so the focus stays on the figures. It will also allow more light to hit the figures too. The displays should complement the figures, not the other way around. Alright, here's the library all folded. It looks a bit strange. That's because it's missing the supporting columns. A couple of columns here and there should complete the look. Just gotta fold these pieces into columns. And do that a couple of times. What could go wrong? Okay, turns out this requires a lot more effort than expected. It took me days to fold and glue 6 columns together. Took me days! There were so many tabs to glue. I had to be careful and gentle so the tabs don't fall apart while drying. But it's worth it. Time to glue everything together. I added some debris texture onto the floor. I want this display to be slightly battle damaged, like the fight Vision had with Fight Vision in the show, right before the Ship of Theseus moment. So that means the 2 columns on the upper level have to be damaged too. They weren't that fun to fold, but I think it adds so much to the story. Now to finish the library, I'm gonna build the fence with some toothpicks. Alright, it is done. Look at that. It looks just like the show. Now let's put the two visions in. Okay, I can't have them stand like that. They have to be floating in the air. Like this. Most of you know how much I dislike using typical figure stands for flying poses. I find them to be distracting. I prefer making my own and blending them with the displays. So I'm going to use my trusty paper clips to twist myself some stands. Like this. Now that's still quite distracting. I need to conceal it with some sort of object. Since this is a library, and the visions just had a fight, I'm going to make a handful of books and scatter them all over the display. Here I am cutting out the book covers. As for the actual books, I'll be using these tiny wood pieces that I cut out from a wooden board. These books are tiny, but as a group they'll look very convincing. Ta-da! Look at that! A handful of books. I'm going to glue the books onto the paper clips so they look like piles of books. Now it's just too convenient to have two piles of books under the visions, so I'm going to scatter the rest of the books onto the floor. Hiya! Now the library is complete, and everything makes sense as a whole. The two visions do look like they're floating in the air in most angles. It's not an exact replica of the scene. You may notice that the two visions aren't exactly face to face. That's because if I pose them the same way they did in the show, their faces will not be fully visible at all. By turning them a bit away from each other, their faces will not be as obstructed. One of their faces will always be visible, meaning a lot more possible viewing angles. The poses are also more dynamic this way. There's a push and pull dynamic between them. One of them is unsure, the other one is trying to help. I know the library looks a bit too small, but I really don't mind it, because if it were to scale, then I would have to have them float even higher in the air, which would be a tough challenge. At least this way, they look like they are flying near the upper level. It's also a lot easier to take photos at this scale. I'm really happy with these photos. They look so good. I just love how there's no bad angles. Even though these two are the same character in a way, I can still tell a story simply with their poses. The body languages convey everything you need to know about them. Regular Vision has this soft sincerity to him, and White Vision has this intimidating aura around him. One of them is friendly, the other deadly. What do you think? Do you like what I've done? Let me know down below. This little project took me weeks to complete. Hope you all like it as much as I do. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Make sure you're subscribed if you want to see more Marvel content. I love making these dioramas. They're all so unique. Speaking of, it's time to add this to my display. Here are my oversized dioramas that won't fit in my display cabinet. And over here are my other ones. Which one of these is your favorite? I can't decide. I love both Wandavision displays equally. Alright, stay inspired. I can make it, so can you.